Your seat, Tanya. Okay, so the time is 1:04. I call the meeting to order. I want to thank everybody for being here. I know that this was short notice, but it was a necessary meeting. And I really appreciate everybody making time out of your busy schedule right before Thanksgiving to have this meeting that was very necessary. And I believe we'll be able to take care of business in a shorter span of time than we normally spend in these meetings. But thank you again. And I would like to ask Julie to please do the roll call. And when you are doing the roll call, please you could do a verbal confirmation to for the minutes for the recording. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First up, Mayor Jim Steiner.
Here.
Amber Smalley, present. Dr. Chen,
Here.
Daryl Clark,
Here.
Bill Blankenship, Leticia de Lara,
Here.
Dr. Charles Lee Johnson,
Happy to be here.
Angelina Coe, Claire Jefferson Glippa,
Thanks.
Carol Alba, Rainbow Marler,
Here.
Danielle Johnson, and Jennifer Munoz.
Here.
Thank you, and we have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent items. 2.1 are the minutes of October 16th. And I would like to request a motion to approve the consent agenda item.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Mayor Steiner and seconded by Rainbow. So is there any public comment? No public comment. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? We have one abstention. Thank you, passes. We will move on to the next item, which is 3.0, public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on an item not listed on the agenda, but is of interest to this body? Is there anybody present? There be none. Julie, is there anybody online that would like to speak on public comments? There being none, we'll move on to the next item, which is 4.0, new business. We have 4.1, 2025 Housing and Urban Development Continuous Care Notice of Funding Opportunity Competition Process. And I will turn it over to Tanya Torno, our Deputy Director.
Good afternoon, COC Board of Governance members, as well as our members from the public who are with us today. We needed to meet with the board today to discuss the release of the fiscal year 2025 HUD Continuum of Care NOFO. HUD recently released this funding opportunity, and I wanted to just start off by sharing that normally the NOFO is released in July and August. I think last year was a bit of a later time frame. The NOFO was released in September. But all that to say that this is the first time where there has been a significant delay. And we know that the NOFO itself provides a funding opportunity of $3.9 billion across the nation, of which our continuum of care is eligible to apply for up to $22 million. So just want to emphasize that there are $22 million available to fund our programs. And part of this presentation will be diving into what HUD is looking to prioritize, as there have been some pretty significant changes in comparison to previous years. So if we advance to the next slide. Again, as I mentioned, 3.9 billion nationwide, and about 52 million of this funding is dedicated to support individuals who are fleeing from domestic violence. And if we advance to the next slide, I'm going to now start talking about some of those significant changes that I was pointing to. So on this slide, you'll see that COCs can essentially, we're required to organize our funding into 2 tiers. And historically, 90% of the funding that we apply for can be organized into tier 1. This year, with some of the changes that HUD is making, only 30% of that funding can go into tier 1. And so we'll talk about in another slide what the dollar per dollar impact looks like. But I just want you to keep in mind that HUD requires COCs to organize their projects in this way as part of their competitive process. And typically what's in tier 1 is quote unquote guaranteed. COCs are likely to receive funding to support those projects. And anything that falls into tier 2 is really competitive. With HUD shrinking tier 1 into 30%, what that essentially is requiring us to do is that of the $22 million that we can compete for in Riverside County, only 5.2 million is likely to be funded or renewed. So that's a really big cut. Second, I wanted to share that HUD is also changing its priorities in terms of the types of projects it would like to fund. Our continuum of care has utilized these funds to support permanent supportive housing projects, which are utilized to support individuals who are chronically homeless and have longer lengths of homelessness than a year, or have a physical and behavioral health disability. What we know now is that HUD is looking to limit permanent housing opportunities for persons that have only a physical disability and those that are 62 years and older. So again, drastic changes that will require us to think about our strategy. Next, there are significant changes in the NOFO that require things like program participation requirements and really focusing on helping people achieve self-sufficiency, which we really aim to do, but their definition is much more specific in the sense that individuals should be moving towards economic mobility, where they are connected to workforce opportunities and not just, government benefits, as an example. Additionally, there's extra points on the NOFO for communities who coordinate and work alongside their law enforcement departments and provide integrated systems of care that work to prohibit camping and drug use in the community. And then for transitional housing, I'll note that there are even some hours or requirements of 40 hours a week in participation of services. So again, just significant changes. What's important to note is that our continuum of care underwent a similar transition back in 2012. And during that time, our COC was operating a variety of transitional housing programs, which is, again, what HUD is looking to transition us to. And at that time, they were making the shift, though, to permanent supportive housing. So we were going right the other way, the opposite direction. In speaking with former members of the COC who are still connected with us today, I connected with Rowena Concepcion, who held my title back then, or worked with the team back then. And she confirmed that during the transition, the COC actually held on and included some transitional housing projects in their application, hoping that those projects would get renewed. And unfortunately, the opposite happened. Those projects were not renewed, and the continuum of care lost funding because they did not switch over to the permanent supportive housing or permanent housing model. So I share that only as I think a reminder. It's really important for us to look at what has been done historically when we had changes to the HUD field office or to our HUD, our national office, and that when these notice of funding opportunities come out, that we really need to pay really close attention to the priorities, the number of points that are available in each criteria, so that we can make sure to bring down as many resources as possible. At the same time, and this will be part of the conversation, I really want to emphasize that our position as a department of the continuum of care has not changed. We very much remain committed to serving every single individual and leveraging every single resource we have to meet the need. And so that means that as part of this process, as part of this transition, as part of this shift, that we're going to be looking at how other state resources we have, even general fund dollars we have, could be used to meet things that HUD is no longer funding. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind. So if we advance to the next slide, here is where you heard me reference the $22 million that is available to our region. This is all of the funding, which includes our annual renewal demand of $17.4 million. This is essentially what HUD is estimating our current projects, the value of our current projects. It's a decrease in comparison to last year, where we had about $18 million. And that's because there was an adjustment to fair market rates, where interesting enough, FMRs went down in Riverside County. So that's why we have a slight change. But that annual renewal demand, what I just want you to keep in mind for now is that is, again, sort of used as a baseline to determine, okay, what does each COC currently get, or what are their current projects currently valued at? You heard me talk about the tier 1, which is 5.2 million. Again, this is equivalent to the 30% that I indicated HUD pretty much guarantees that we're going to get. And then there's about 4.5, I'm going to round up, hopefully that's okay with others here, but $4.6 million in bonus funding that we can competitively apply for. This is brand new funding, in addition to DV bonus funding, which can be used to support survivors of domestic violence. Next slide. On this table, you'll just see a comparison. We wanted to show the percentage of change across all of the different categories. Again, the biggest drop being that there's a 60% change in the number of dollars that would fall into tier 1, or that we would automatically be renewed for. Why this is important is because in a few slides here, we're going to be talking about the impact to people, the impact to families, the impact to veterans. This is an existing program that is serving existing households. And so as our commitment and wanting to make sure that we plan to draw down the most amount of resources we can in our region, we also want to make sure that we take care of the people that are currently being assisted. Next slide. You heard me talk about the $5.2 million. Again, just to reiterate, change in permanent housing is now prioritized for people with physical and developmental disabilities. I forgot to mention developmental, so that's important. And elderly who are 62 plus. The focus, again, is mainly for transitional housing and supportive service only projects that provide or aid people in treatment recovery related services. And the NOFO is definitely giving extra points to COCs who partner with agencies that have experience. Experience is profound. I think there's about 16 points in that area. And then number 5 is important here because as a result of the NOFO coming out so late in the year, it's the first time where we have a gap in the period of performance. So it's important to note that we have existing projects that are administered through several agencies that begin February 1st. And this NOFO only supports projects that begin or have start dates of May 1st. So there is a gap. You know, with all of these changes, I should say that the NOFA was released. There was one briefing held about a week ago. And we know because we're a part of so many different groups, COCs in Southern California, but even COCs across the state, we're meeting together to discuss. We've all put together a lot of questions because we're looking for clarity. And so we know that HUD is expected to provide additional briefings where they will answer some of those questions. But I emphasize that to say that all we know is what's included in the NOFO. HUD has yet to release the actual application, so we can't even go in or see the questions that HUD is asking. And so we're working, right, just based on what we can interpret. And of course, closely with, it's important to note, we have a HUD consultant with urban initiatives. Pat Leslie is on the line. She works with and for Joe Coletti, whom a lot of you have worked with historically. And so she's on the line to help us and has been supporting our team throughout this entire process. So if we advance to the next slide, here is where, again, we wanted to showcase in terms of impact what our continuum of care program looks like right now. Again, you heard me say right now, full projects worth of $18 million. About 15.8 of that is currently going to support permanent housing projects, and it supports individuals who, yes, are physically disabled. We certainly have seniors, but also those that have behavioral health issues. And you'll see me in the next slide break down those by subpopulation. But at least for now, about 60 million is supporting permanent housing. About 1.6 million supports our coordinated entry or our homeless management information system infrastructure, which are important systems of care because they help us determine vulnerability and connect the limited resources we have with those that need it. But also, right, HMIS is such a valuable tool to help us measure our investment and our progress. So we'll want to continue investing in those systems. I just wanted to emphasize that. And then about $870,000 goes towards planning. The planning dollars are the only dollars that don't have to be ranked. So those are just automatically renewed by HUD. So I'll just make that note. And then again, with all of this funding, we're supporting 619 households or 884 individuals. So keep that in mind. And now on the next slide is where you'll get the breakdown by population. And I'm not sure that this slide or all of these slides made it to your handout. So I'm just gonna think it's really important to call out who we're serving. Of the 877 individuals, 19 are veterans, 10 are individuals who have an HIV positive status, 484 are families or minor children, 10 are transitional age youth, 18 to 24, 140 are 62 and older, 204 are persons with a physical disability, 83 are persons with a developmental disability, and 406 are those with a mental health disability, and 198 have a substance use disability.
Sorry, these are,
Oh, hold on.
sorry.
Okay, well, let her finish and then you are at the next yourself.
But what I will say is that I think the question that Dr. Chang is going to ask is that many of these individuals can meet multiple categories. Yeah, so I think that's important to note. We broke it down this way because as part of our contingency planning efforts, and wanting to begin to work with agencies to transition these individuals to other programs they may qualify for, we want to use, to do it this way to better facilitate those connections. There are programs, I'll use HEDVASH as one, which is another federally funded program that supports veterans. In this way, we would be able to sort of facilitate those connections. Dr. Chang, any other?
No,
Okay, so I'm gonna pause now, so let me open it up for questions from the board, and then I'll give every board member an opportunity to ask questions at this point, and then board member continue. Dr. Chang?
Oh, no, I think Tanya was answering my question about that. I have other questions, but I'll let I just did the math question, but I'll let other folks ask and that kind of stuff.
Other board members will have questions right now. You're more than welcome to address them right now or wait until the end when he finishes. Okay, Tanya, please continue.
So advancing to the next slide, we talked about some of the major changes, again, heavy emphasis on program requirements. I wanted to share that at the Continuum of Care meeting last Wednesday, we took a motion to the COC to add 2 law enforcement seats to the board. This was done as a result, or because it's a requirement in the NOFO that COCs are configured this way. And again, in speaking with some of our COC members, I wanted to share that the goal right now is not necessarily to fast track and fill those seats. We know that we need to have more extended conversations with all of our COC members as well as our board on what those would look like. But the ability to indicate on our application that these seats were reserved for law enforcement would allow us also to secure a dominant number of points on the application. So just note that there will be more conversation surrounding what that looks like, what the terms look like in future meetings. Additionally, I think the other things I write, just quickly going over, recovery is important, self-sufficiency, specifically with earned income to employment. And then there's a huge emphasis on rewarding communities who have reductions in unsheltered homelessness. And I want to remind this COC and our board that Riverside County has certainly done the last. We had a 19% reduction in our unsheltered homelessness this year. Moving to the next slide. You heard me talk about all the people that are currently being assisted by the program. Another action that the Continuum of Care took during the meeting last Wednesday was to revise its coordinated entry system prioritization policy so that any individuals that are currently being assisted will be prioritized and referred to the next housing opportunities that become available. So we want to thank the COC for its commitment in doing that and recognizing that we needed to start making these plans as early as possible because, right, I think all of our housing providers would confirm that we don't have beds just sitting vacant, right? They usually become available only on turnover. Next slide. Here is where I wanted to introduce our strategy for this year's application. Number one is that our recommendation, again, this is tied to the motion, is that we create all new projects that align with HUD's priorities to a T. And that means that we're going to be taking a very close look at the NOFO and looking at the requirements and looking to create projects that will award us the most number of points, because we know that this year in comparison to the last 10, 12 years is the most competitive. Second is that given this approval, we would be releasing, on here it says a request for qualifications, but we're working in real time, and after consulting with County Council and Purchasing, we actually want to update that to reflect a request for information. which would allow us to basically submit an RFI into the community to see which vendors are interested in administering these projects. It would allow us to obtain information from existing existing subrecipients who currently administer these programs, but also welcomes new vendors to also express interest in operating these projects. Third, we would still be meeting with all of you, the board, on December 11th for our regular meeting, which at that time, we would be then working to review and rank the new projects we created into tier 1 and tier 2, which means that board, like, you're going to have to help us determine which ones go into the $5.2 million pot that we absolutely want to get, and which ones are we okay with sort of taking the chance on. But again, that'll be done on December 11th. The application is due January 14th, but I think it was Catherine or Rashana from our team who said we should never plan for the day. So she wants to program our brains to remember January 12th, which is what we're planning for our submission date. After we submit our application to HUD, the plan would then be to release a local competition in early February. That would be open for the range of time that is much more appropriate for a 4-week period, where we would allow anyone to apply to operate those new projects that we created. And we'd work with what our policies say is that we would develop an independent review panel made up of COC members who would help us score those projects for those vendor applications. And then we'd be coming back to the board after to make those funding recommendations. And then HUD is expected to announce awards for this funding competition in May and June of this year. So the next slide really just provides an example of what like tier 1, tier 2 could look at. I promise this is just an example. We just wanted to give you a visual to show like what HUD expects and how they expect you to have projects that total 5.2 and then projects that equal your full ARD. And I think that's it. The final slide talks about the NOFA release date. Again, we're still waiting for the application to actually be available, so we can't even really start working on it until then. And with that, before we wrap up this presentation completely, I wanted to turn it over to Greg Rodriguez from our team and Board of Governance Secretary to talk about the advocacy efforts that have been focused around this NOFA.
Yeah, I think most of you know there's been a lot of uncertainty over the last couple of months, especially about what was going to happen with the new NOFO. There was a lot of advocacy work that just kind of lists some of the stuff that we did as a department in conjunction with other national and state organizations prior to the release of the NOFO, to hopefully encourage them, at least at HUD, not to change to this new one that I won't label in the bad way, even though I hate it in the bad way. And then actually there is still advocacy going on primarily with congressional members. We are doing it both in Riverside County as well as across the country right now. Because Congress still would have the ability to maintain current NOFO guidelines. So we're not going to take wood for this, that advocacy hopefully will continue. There have been a couple congressional members, more than a couple, a few actually, who are proposing legislation. But we don't know how much support that has yet, so we'll continue to monitor that and continue to advocate for basically the status quo, because this, as Tanya's pointed out, this is a big lift, and it really is going to affect quite a bit of people. And that's not just Riverside County, but that's across the state of California and across the country, actually, in areas that are in far worse shape than we are.
Thank you, Greg. Tanya, did you have anything to add before I open it up for the board member comments?
No
questions. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, it's a lot to take in. I'm gonna ask our board members, starting with our board members first, if you have any questions or comments, and then we'll open it up for public comments. Board members?
Well, how about first,
Dr.
Johnson, this is sad, disappointing. So just kind of want to speak to that part of it we've been really successful for over a decade in advancing a model here in Riverside. And if I'm honest, it feels like a lot of what you shared is like the undoing of that. I remember the ages before, and so having to adapt to a model where we've been there and done that, and we knew that that wasn't the solution. We've moved forward, and now we're moving backwards. It's frustrating. It's also very concerning for the numerous families that people are going to get lost in this. So when we're looking at the numbers and the shifts, beyond the numbers, those are people, those are families, and folks are going to get lost in there. So just a moment, I guess, for me that says, man, this hurts. It hurts to even have to look at a different strategy. I wanted to say that and then get to my questions. First question, and I'll try to combine a few of these. With the application not being out yet, to me, there's been a lot of things delayed, not just in this area, but in a lot of areas that I work of where things are just not on time. And I'm wondering what happens if this doesn't even come out on time, right? So there's one end there with an already built-in gap, even if everything runs on time from the February 1st to the May 1st. Could you explain to us how that gap is going to get closed, of how people will be, how are we doing what we're supposed to do? What message is being sent to vendors, what message is being sent to clients on these gaps that are looming there? What happens? I almost feel like politically there might be a game played where the application doesn't even come out on time, like just because, right? Which throws everything off. So I feel like that's the politics of what's being played, but maybe you have an answer there.
I'll start by answering the question around like what message have we provided to the recipients, because I want you to know that that is where we started first. And when I say we started first, like we've been having conversations with our existing vendors on the potential impacts, because we were hearing rumors of right, that there were going to be changes probably for the last 2 to 3 months. And so as soon as that started, we began meeting with our subrecipients to talk about who was in their programs, and begin to sort of brainstorm on, okay, what are some contingencies, like what does messaging look like to participants? I will say that our that response is very it's gonna be very involved, but we're actually going to be having case conferencing meetings with all of our subrecipients to talk about, okay, who do you have and who's timing out first, and how much more do you think they need before they can forward their rent? Because ultimately that's what these conversations are about, is will this family be able to afford their rent? Again, some of those strategies also includes linking people up to other affordable housing units. So we're really looking at this from like a systems level. I hear someone from my team really filling in the dots. What affordable housing units do we have currently in development that are taking people, and can we begin to connect people that way? We're looking even at shared housing as sort of a mechanism for people that are on a fixed income. Are we able to match people up in that way? That this board has been instrumental in helping us develop our youth homeless system of care. And so we have spaces there for transitional age youth. So we're looking at facilitating those connections. So we're really just, beginning, and our strategy is sort of, as soon as possible, but at a minimum 60 to 90 days out. So when we have projects expire, as we're sort of planning like 90 days before a project expiration date to sort of begin to facilitate those connections. In regards to what happens if the application doesn't come out on time, right, in some ways, I hope that would be a good sign of there's going to be a change that will result in the automatic renewal of all projects. But also that the impact is that then we don't have any agreements in place at all to support anybody in our programs, and that would be detrimental to the 877 people on program. So it's unfortunate, right, that we are sort of in this situation. But you know, what we've heard from HUD is the application will be released in the upcoming days. So that's what we're holding on to at the moment.
So people have been communicated that there's permanent housing, that we have this as a model.
Mhm.
We're gonna start communicating to people that we're moving to a transitional model, which damages the integrity of agencies who have promised communities, which is why communities often don't trust agencies, right? Like this is the cycle, right? We don't trust what you say because it just comes back around to where, oh, you're gonna be here for me, and now you're not gonna be here for me. So just wondering, maybe in the December meeting, maybe we are able to work around messaging of that transition plan so that we can maybe get ahead of the narrative of how we communicate to clients, constituents, community members. I think all of those things will impact everyone around the table. One other thing, as you itemize the levels of disability, from my understanding of looking at the proposed legislation, is that substance use is not an included disability. And so that is not something that will be included as a tier one sort of. Is that correct? Or I wasn't clear as we were going through the presentation, but I'm not sure if that's true or untrue.
So it's good you asked because I can clarify. So for permanent housing, which HUD indicates only 30% of what you apply for can go into the permanent housing bucket. That's permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. That assistance can only be provided to people that have a physical disability and or a developmental disability and are 62 and older. So you're right, Dr. Lee Johnson, that it does not acknowledge a substance use disability as part of the eligibility criteria for the first time. But it, right, what the NOFO does say is that for these individuals, the preference or the preferred method of assistance should be transitional housing, where assistance is capped at 24 months. Right, the idea is like help them get better and then graduate off the program. It was interesting because, again, like I said, we're really learning this in like real time, and there's a lot of confusion. During a call last week with the National Alliance on Homelessness, which is a huge advocacy organization, one of the things that they clarified that isn't so spelled out in the NOFO is that they're silent on mental health. So we really don't know where, like, if a mental health disability would qualify under permanent housing. So that still has a very big question mark on it. And so we're waiting for clarification. But yes, permanent housing does not, as of now, include behavioral health diagnosis.
Member Dr. Johnson, any other questions or comments before we move on to the next member? Dr. Johnson?
No,
Okay. Okay, Director Fry.
I'm sad too. Look at, just want to share my sadness too. All of this, he's a lead, right?
Right.
I'm kind of side-eyeing the federal government as per usual. I'm trying to figure out the intentions behind all these changes.
You know the intention.
I do know the intention. Yeah. But it's very clear that they want to do very temporary solutions when we, as the state of California, we have a high, our housing crisis is more than other states. So I'm kind of like figuring out how can we advocate with our lobbyists before accepting the change, right?
Mhm.
I do like Tanya's approach to being proactive with it. I do think we're heading in the right direction, kind of being the head of it. But it's very unfortunate that we have to even shift the model altogether. So I'll start with that. Second of which, the law enforcement thing. To me, I'm seeing the attention with law enforcement being more connected to housing support as a way to, kind of prove HUD's and the federal government's kind of like we need to police the solutions. And I honestly don't believe in more law enforcement as a solution to like housing crises. I think it causes more of chaos than any solution. But I do think the federal government is pushing that envelope, trying not to give out free band-aids, you know how they do, and kind of giving it a permanent solution. So that's unfortunate as well. Yeah. Let's see, you have a question, law enforcement. Okay, I think that's more, I didn't want to get off my chest, I want to start there. Of course, there's a lot of vendors who do provide permanent supportive housing that are not going to get funded for next year's cycle. So I guess that's the main question to me, to the board or to the team. How do we protect those people who are kind of waiting for that money to come back around? And yeah, how do we solve their issues as well?
Yeah, I will, say that this is very much gonna be a work in progress and just reiterate that we've started those conversations with subrecipients. But I did want to share that, the state of California has been, very supportive, communicative, like they've been communicating with us, reaching out to us. And we actually have a call with them tomorrow, with their, Office of Interagency, it's their California Interagency Council on Homelessness. And we're meeting with them, and they've included us in conversations with San Francisco, Sacramento, and Los Angeles. So, and I think the idea here is really to sort of brainstorm on how we're going to begin to, facilitate and make sure that people don't fall out of housing who have it today. So this is actively happening, and we're trying to sort of facilitate and engage in every single conversation that we can, as possible. And I forgot there was a second point that I was going to make. Just to overemphasize that I can't thank the agencies enough who are currently administering these programs. I called every single director and spoke to them in preparation for this board meeting. I shared what our recommendation was going to be, and they all agreed that we needed to be strategic, that we needed to maximize, any way we could to build the most competitive applications so that we could get the full dollars that we're allotted for. And I think one of the creative things, right, that we're exploring, and I mentioned that Pat Leslie with Urban Initiatives is on, is if we are funded, right, let's say we get whatever we get 10 million or we get the full 17 million. One idea is that as people's current agreements are expiring, that a way to make them eligible for this new assistance would be to provide them with, right, a letter saying that their assistance is going to be in. Now they're at risk of homelessness, and they could potentially transition into these new projects that we're assisting. I'm thinking about what Dr. Lee said in terms of messaging. Like, we don't want to create PTSD, right, and like freak people out with these notices. I think we're going to have to be very clever, intentional about how those letters go out and when they go out, but that's sort of one strategy for how we make people eligible for continued assistance. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. Director
Claire.
Claire.
So that was actually my question. So I have I'm not sad, I'm mad. So my first question is, this sounds like semantics. So is there a way for us to reframe our current supportive housing model to fit within the confines of Scooby-Doo, whatever they call it in HUD. Like, is there a way, I would love for us to research ways for us to fit our square peg in their round hole, and for us as the team to do the work, and our families just keep doing what the heck they're doing. That's what I would love for us to do as much as possible as a COC, right? Baby, go to these 2 meetings, eat some ice cream, great, sign these papers, go back to your transitional unit that looked just like yesterday's permanent supportive housing, right? Like, I would love for us to, like, we're brilliant people, right? We're scrappy people. We all come from scrappy. Like, let's get scrappy, right? I recognize our need to meet the I's and the dots and check the boxes. And how do we implement those checks and balances in a way that provides the least amount of trauma to those who we have committed to care for?
Director, can we have staff respond to that one before you move?
Yeah,
on to the next one?
absolutely.
Okay, Tanya, what are your thoughts?
No, just those have been conversations that we're having as a department, that COCs are having as well. And so to the degree that we can, I think as we develop those new projects, that's going to be our aim. I will say, right, there's some like technical things we'll have to sort through, which I'll just share as an example. Most of the individuals assisted in permanent housing have a lease agreement between the landlord, right, and themselves. And so the agency is sort of kept out of the arrangement, and is providing a third-party subsidy. In transitional housing, it's a very different setup where usually there's like a master lease agreement, or you have, I know we have a lot of vendors, you have an agency who owns a home and is operating it in that way. So we'll just have to work through those kind of technical things to make it work. But I know that we very much sort of agree with that spirit, and are working towards that as well.
Director?
Yes.
Can I say something?
Yes, if it's okay with
Just
you.
to respond to that, just that, I'm in agreement with you. And then at the same end, I would encourage the team to be very cautious. That the current leadership, at least from what I'm doing in DC and back and forth, they're looking for stuff like that. And so anything that doesn't fit uniquely with their model is an easy cancel. And I do think we could end up being in a real loss situation if there isn't a big pivot. I hate the pivot. I like your word better than mine, sad versus mad too. I do just want to caution that maybe it needs to, if it still looks like the old model, there's a complete rejection of anything that looks like it. So repackaging it, there's smart people on all sides. And so just want to throw that out there.
My other question is, do we have an analysis of the actual rent gap? Right, so if we are fully funded at the 17 million, and everybody that's currently receiving supportive housing that fits into that gap is funded, what's our difference? Okay, so, right, let's say right now we get the 17 million.
Okay.
Right, and we're just gonna use a pretend number, 17 million equals 1,000 people. It don't, but just rock with me, right? But only 30% of those people are 65 and have a disability, right? The rest of those folks, how much rent, how many dollars do we as a COC need in 2026 in order to keep those people home? Do we have that number?
So the impact is so I can calculate the number, I think, pretty quickly with myself, because he's like, no pressure, Mike, but no, I'll try to, but there's essentially the impact is to 433 households. Because we would only be able to support, I think it was about 180 or whatever the difference is. Let me do this real quick. And so the impact is we would only be able to support 192 households if we get the 5.2 million. which means the difference is actually, 448 households. And then average months, average cost per month. To stay about 1,600, I don't want right. About 716,800 a month times 12. It's about an $8.6 million account
Okay, that's helpful though.
annual.
Have we looked into other possible funding sources, state, private partnerships?
Yes, yes to all of those. I'm hoping that the conversation with the state tomorrow will be a part of that. We're also looking at, other, as an example, like, county HAP resources that we have, and we actually had it designated towards a project, but we're actually looking at maybe parking those to support this temporarily. So we are exploring all those avenues, and maybe at the next couple of meetings, in the new year, we can provide a broader presentation to the board about what those actually look like, just because we're still very much in the planning stage. We just got the NOFO about a week ago. So.
Madam Chair, if I could clarify on the funding.
Okay, on this topic?
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
Important to note too, that we do not have quite as much in the state commitment as we've had in the last 2 to 3 years.
Mhm.
A lot of those dollars came through the American Rescue Plan Act, as well as the HIP funding, or the housing and homeless incentive programs for the health plans. And in the current budget, only 500 million was allocated to HAP, or the round 7 instead of the usual 1 billion.
50% cut.
Now there's still this advocacy around that, and working with a lot of legislators right now, legislators right now to hopefully increase that 500 back to $1 billion. But there will be opportunities hopefully with the housing bond, but so just want to be cautious that we're just really setting realistic expectations about other outside sources. So.
Director Jefferson.
Yes, and then I think I'm on my last question. Thank you for your patience. Is there a possibility of us losing like affordable housing covenants as a result of?
Yeah, no, we looked into that, and the HUD Continuum of Care program doesn't fund any existing affordable housing projects.
Okay.
But I know it's a good question you're asking, because I know other COCs do use their funds to support other affordable housing projects that weren't.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, very good question and comments. Dr. Chen?
Yeah, and, no, thank you, Tanya, and, thank HWS and all you guys for putting this together, and apologize. I didn't know how hard you guys must be working. They dropped a bunch of bond bills all at once, so I'm sorry for you guys and that, and that's just a real challenge. I have questions about the motion, not the motion itself, but the content of the motion. So it is allowing, so everyone who has applied would scrap their application. And you all, HWS, would submit an application. Is that right? Okay. And the idea there is that there's a short turnaround, what they're scoring high and bad and all that good stuff. So what would happen if we didn't do this? Because I mean, I think you've talked to everybody, you talked to a lot of folks involved. And so everyone is hearing that, hey, what we've all historically done isn't going to work anymore. Won't be funded because of that. What if we continued the way we did before and just everyone applied like we have historically? Like what's the difference there? And I know consultants or someone has suggested this strategy, and I have questions about that. But that's my first part. What's so different than, hey, we're all smart folks here. We all know what the new rules of the game are. Everyone disperse and go apply like we've done historically.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. So I'll explain our process just to kind of remind the board, because you guys we do this together every single year. So essentially, every year when the NOFO comes out, we release a local RFP from the very beginning, and we allow agencies to prepare project applications to support, right, their missions and, right, they align, the idea is that those projects would align with the NOFO, and then those projects are then reviewed and ranked by an independent review panel. We're asking to move forward with an RFI versus an RFP because, one, we know that local agencies are just as confused, right, as other COCs across the state about the NOFO, and it would be extremely difficult for them to create projects that align with HUD's priorities. So the challenge is, if we do an RFP now and we allow agencies to prepare project proposals and we include those in the application, we're sort of taking a chance. All those project applications may not align with HUD's priorities. That's the chance we're taking versus, right, what HUD allows, because in our COC, the county serves as the administrative lead. We have the ability to just create all new projects that would allow us to do that. And then, right, we would still solicit an RFP, but it would come at a later time. And then those agencies would hopefully have that make sense.
And just so I understand, so, right now, you guys submit and you guys put out an RFP, and so everyone applies for RFP that
Yep.
gets into that.
Yep. They would create their own projects, right, based on
Today, no, I'm talking about today, that's what's happening today. Like, it's like.
historically. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you guys put an RFP, everyone looks like, oh, I can do that, I can't do that, whatever.
They create their applications, and those applications get included in our application.
And so is it a timing? I mean, I guess my question again is, why don't we do, what would happen if we just did the same thing? Although in this
Yeah.
scenario, you know, the feds are the RFP people pointing out.
So there's two things. One, again, right, keeping in mind that our goal is to try to maximize and build a competitive application. And so, right, there's a chance then that all of those projects would not meet or score the most competitively on our COC application. But two, the timeline is an issue. Normally, in a bid process, you would open up the competition for at least a 4-week period. In this scenario, and again, we don't even have the questions to ask yet. The application window would be maybe 2 weeks, if that, because we're required to have all of our proposals in by December 14th, and that is a HUD established date. That's another, so I'm glad you asked that, because I did not mention that in my presentation, is that there are other deadlines that are mapped out in the NOFO, which include having all of your proposals in by December 14th. We're already, what's today, November 24th. We're waiting on the application. So let's say that if the questions come out this week, we'd probably have an RFP open for 2 weeks at most. And then we'd still have to review and score them.
No, thank you for that. I can see, I know I was gonna ask, so this is not the only path forward, right? This is a path forward. Just some preliminary, just looking stuff online. It seems like a lot of COCs are struggling with this, understandably. Do you know, and I assume that the person who's consulting is making the recommendation to the other places here, she is working with. But how many other BOGs across the state are going for this sort of consolidated approach? Do you have any idea? Or?
I know that, so I will say that the decision, the recommendation was really something that, right, we brainstormed in, and we of course ran it by our HUD consultants to confirm that this was a good strategy and appropriate and would allow us to maximize on the number of points. On the last call that we were at with other Southern California COCs, we know that at least Orange County and I think it was Long Beach and LA had expressed an interest in a strategy. I will say that in speaking with some of our nonprofits who have other contracts or have contracts and other COCs have shared that, right, they support our strategy because it gives them time. Right now, they're themselves trying to figure out how they're going to convert their rent, their permanent housing projects to transitional housing projects. And it's very difficult. So they agree that we need to look at this from a systems sort of level lens and just do the best we can to bring in the most amount of funding, create new projects, and then go out after. But you're right, Dr. Chang, in that every COC is sort of taking a different approach, and I think that's sort of part of the competitive process is we're all looking at this a little differently.
And last thing on that, sorry, it just,
Then you need,
now we're like voting on something that we don't know what it is necessarily. We know the broad strokes is fair, but I don't think any of us have read it, seen it, and so I understand this is there's absolutely nothing to do with you all, but just timing wise, it feels, and I know what the response is, it's sort of, well, you make do with the best information you have at the time, but it does feel like we're voting on something that we don't have a full understanding parameters.
thank you, Dr. King. Any other questions, comments from our board members? Director, Mayor, Secretary.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up on the question that the gentleman asked about lobbying efforts. What can we do as a COC? What can we do as individuals? What can we do with nonprofits to reach out to our elected Congress?
Yeah, so as they said, the COCs, or we've reached out to our congressional delegates on behalf of the COC. I would suggest, especially as a mayor of a city where a lot of activity is going on in, the contact, and you can probably is your congressional representative. NAEH has been actually doing a lot of pressure on Albert because he's expressed some support for HUD funding in the past. It's hard to believe, but he has. So that's what I would encourage. Congressional members are getting inundated. You have the National Low Income Housing Coalition, NAEH, Corporation for Supportive Housing, individual COCs. We had a conversation just late last week,
Feels like
about we're actually developing some talking points and communication aspects for individual elected officials like yourself, so that we can not only educate what we think is happening, but what the impact may be. As you're aware, Mayor, we had a considerable drop in our unsheltered homelessness population this past year, and that's really fearful that you could actually see that flip. And so we want to make sure that you're all prepared and not only knowing what we see happening, to Dr. Train's point and to Tanya's point, we still even found an application, we don't know the full realm of it. But more importantly, so that we're being proactive in letting you and the community know what possible impact.
Yeah, great. Yeah, some sort of form letter with all the details that we're all speaking the same language that we can use and forward to our individual Congress members.
And I think our challenge is, I'll have to send you something. Our challenge is, again, there's a lot of unknowns still. And we know that there's still advocacy efforts going on in Congress. So before we get out of that and say what the real impact is, as Tanya said earlier, we don't want to implement PTSD or anything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions, Director Chen?
Yeah, thank you. I think Dr. Lee Johnson mentioned, so I'm not sure, but can we just understand some clarity? So, they're cutting funding. They are saying a chunk of what you've done before isn't competitive under the new rules. Just heavily understood. So it is likely that a number of folks who have been funded previously will not be funded. And so I assume we're all examining our own house internally and trying to figure out how we figure things out. I guess my question, I think Dr. Lee Johnson asked about it, and someone mentioned something about it, but I just wanted to clarify. In terms of HWS's thoughts about other available funding, the reason I bring this up is, and we're all getting cuts, right? So RUHS, we had a totally other conversation with AB 109, and they're cutting this, that, and this. There are cuts everywhere. And so that makes it extremely challenging for each department, CBO, entity. But could you speak a little bit to, your thoughts of where additional funding might be if it exists?
We're looking everywhere, but it's also, I will say that, we are looking at opportunities that even exist, even before we look at like what new funding opportunities come. I want this board to keep in mind that, right, we're looking at what resources are already in play through affordable housing, through permanent supportive housing projects that we can add people to the wait list to, or if those developments are opening next week, how do we get these people like front in lines as a strategy? In terms of new funding opportunities, right, as Greg mentioned, well, yes, we're having a conversation with the state. I tend to be a little bit more optimistic, but I think it's great that you kept it real, because the reality is we don't know what they have to offer, but we're certainly going to look at even resources that we have through, I mentioned like the county HAP, because that's, I think, a pocket of funding that we've identified that could potentially be used to support individuals, even if just temporarily. Right, the success would be, I mean, the win would be if we could bring down the full amount of resources that were eligible through this grant, where we could just, help get people to those beds. But I don't know if there's anything else that.
Well, there's a reason why Tanya put that slide that tells you who is occupying the beds. There are veterans there, so internally we're looking at, is there any way to expedite BASH vouchers for those, although those were in the minimum numbers.
Can you go back to that slide?
Mental health and behavioral health. So we've gone to your team and asked if there's a way to transition them into programs that you have, you may have funding available for. We've gone to our housing authority to see if there's any rental assistance or turnover vouchers to see if those could be set aside for this purpose. So we've gone down the list first according to population. Then we've done a scan of local funds. So we've gone to our executive office to talk about this opportunity and said, if this occurs, can there be some funding that's set aside for this purpose? Tomorrow at the state conversation, we'll bring that up to them as well. But we're essentially always looking out for something new. That doesn't mean, I mean, none of what Tanya has reported today should be taken as any sort of guarantee, because I think we all recognize that we're in a very difficult position. The last thing we want is for any of these 619 households and 884 individuals to go back into a homelessness situation. So we're going to do whatever we can without hesitation to place them in a secure spot. But do we have any guarantees that we're going to do that? We're nowhere near that. It's too soon. It's not for lack of trying.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, I was saying, no, I appreciate that. Hey, thank you very much. And that was part of my question, like who we talked to, because I assume the team talking to the various departments and like, hey, do you have funding this? I'm like, what if the department doesn't? Like, what if, folks are being cut elsewhere? What if an entity, CBO, someone is being cut or doesn't have it? Then what happens? And so what is available above and beyond and so I don't know if it is the executive office, if it's other places, but those seem like important conversations.
Something for that.
Yes, as soon as he's ready.
Thank you.
It brings a thought that I was going to bring up a few months ago, and I'm not sure how we do that within this group, but I know I would like to transition my role into sort of working in this other sphere. We're always so heavily dependent upon government contracts and government money. It would be so good if we had a private sort of way in order to gather monies of donors, philanthropists, other folks who are equally as excited about resolving homelessness, and that somewhere in here we were able to attract those types of funds and be able to operate without the heavy restrictions that comes with HUD and with all this other stuff that's there. So I certainly would love to go in that way so that when this question comes back again at some other point, we can say we actually do have access to other pools of money, right? Because we're not so government dependent.
Yeah, we're just to add, we are definitely looking at every avenue. We're having conversations with our managed care plans. I know many of our nonprofits, administer or have contracts with IHP and Molina. As a county or as a department, we're also sort of exploring that as an avenue for additional revenue. So I'm glad Heidi brought us back to why we split people up by population, subpopulation, is because we're looking to facilitate connections that way. And just to share, I think the California's Housing Support Program is a state-funded program that supports families with children. So that's going to be sort of a tool that we're going to be looking to transition people to in that way as well. So it's going to take, Dr. Cheng, to your point, it's going to take everything and so many different conversations to make sure it happens.
Thank you. Other board members? Director
I want to throw an idea out, like a
Yeah.
strategy, rather. So it sounds like we're gonna get a lot of money for temporary, like transitional work. So I'm thinking that we need to also be smart about how can we make people self-sufficient very fast, right? So how can we get them through like their 6 months of motel assistance or whatever program they're in? But also they need to get a job as soon as possible, or go back to school, or you got to be smart about something that's you're not guaranteed permanent supportive long term. It's like, here's your little small voucher, but there needs to be a strategy where we can kind of connect them to the services to continue on. I think this is
Absolutely.
I just think when I agree with
Director
you.
Johnson?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just swing your arm is, I agree with you. I just think that a lot of times when we're looking at this model is a kind of a blaming the victim sort of model, right? Where the reality is that the majority of people are not in a homeless situation because they don't have skills. And a lot of times not even because of a lack of education. It costs a hell of a lot of money just to live out here. And so the things that we know that have worked in this state are guaranteed income. Guaranteed income actually helps people to, so I think if we're looking at those models, sustainable models that are proposed by the County of Riverside, then I think we're going somewhere. Fast tracking people who've been homeless into a job is a crisis waiting to happen, right? You're just leading to the next thing. There's no way to rush through that. As a person who formerly was in that, like you just, it takes time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes everything of what's being done. But I hear you, somewhere we're gonna have to have a strategy. So I'm with you. We have to have a strategy, but the strategy that works in California, guaranteed income, you just don't have enough money to afford a place here.
Thank you, Director. Is there any other questions, comments from other directors?
I have a question, and
Marlon?
it wasn't mentioned, but is White Sheep League affected by this?
So at national level, YHDP programs are based on their renewal. We're fortunate in that we have a little bit more time because our current agreements don't expire until 2027. So we have about a year and a half before we run into that situation, and we'll have to see what the NOFO says then. If I could just take advantage of this time just to expand on the comments around workforce development, to say that we are working very closely with our workforce services division, which is led by Stephanie Adams, to make sure that one, she's going to be like our one, one of our best friends as we work through the NOFO, to make sure that we integrate those efforts, but just to share that we have started several initiatives. You may have heard of like the Homeless to Work program, where both in Moreno Valley, but in the Pass area, we are connecting people to workforce opportunities and housing sort of simultaneously. And so I think, right, our goal now is going to be to do that across the board. But specifically with the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, we have integrated services so that any young adult who goes to a youth opportunity center, which is our employment centers for youth, if they're housing insecure, that they're automatically linked to our continuum of care. So I think that those are definitely movements that we're looking to make happen. And then in regards to the sort of affordability challenge, as Dr. Lee was talking, I was reminded that there's a study that is done regarding the cost of housing and income. And in order to live here, I think that, someone has to earn $36 an hour. So, right, you can connect someone to a job, but are they gonna, to Dr. Lee Johnson's point, like, is that job gonna allow them to make enough to make their rent? And in most cases, no, it doesn't, which is why the production and building out of affordable housing is so critical.
Thank you, Tanya. Directors, any other questions, comments from? Yes.
There's mine as well. I know that Supervisor Spiegel does share the same concerns that Dr. Chain brought up. We do, however, agree, whatever housing has come up with, we understand that you guys always have a game plan, so we're appreciative of that. We'll vote according to how the Board of Governance decides. I do have just a quick question about the 30% for permanent housing. You guys said that it doesn't include any substance abuse. Is there a section in these tiers that it can be provided towards substance abuse still?
Yeah, so substance use individuals can be assisted through transitional housing.
Okay.
Yes, so they can.
And Madam Chair, if I could add on to that too.
Yes, you may, Greg.
Just there's been a lot of questions about what the definition of disability is.
Yeah.
And I think what you will do is you will see advocacy groups challenge that in court. Because I think most of us sitting around this table believe that substance use is a disability. And so that's one other aspect. So.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments? Oh, yes, Dr. Chen.
Yeah, Chair, last thing, just that procedural thing. The independent review panel. And this is on me for not knowing this, but it's currently comprised of who?
We recruit from our COC membership body.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the same will be the same exact group will recruit again for the next go around or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, questions, comments? Okay, and if you have any, please raise your hand. If, after we hear from our public, is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this item? First, we'll start with in person. Is there any member of the public in person that would like to speak on this item? Okay, there being none, I'm going to ask, I'm sorry, yes, please announce yourself and.
Controversy with my new income strategy. I know you kind of touched on a little bit about the managed healthcare plans, but I mean, I don't know if we have a lot of money, but there is money in the pot right now with the managed healthcare plans for housing and community supports. So what are we doing, especially like as a mental health provider with 448 individuals or families? How are we using that, or how are we, going with certain agencies that are able to use those funds and able to kind of help before we even get to that crisis?
Mm-hmm.
So I know we're talking about what are we going to say? We may not have to even go there if some of them already meet that criteria, and what are we doing to kind of help that?
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to look at too beforehand.
So hopefully I'm understanding correctly, but I think what you're saying is that a lot of our managed care plans currently provide resources that support the individuals that are impacted here. And I will share that it's, our a lot of our vendors who provide permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing are actually community support vendors or provide ECM related services. And so I think, right, naturally what we've heard is that individuals who are receiving housing assistance are often benefiting from those services. I think what I'm taking from you is sort of a suggestion to, as we begin to map people up into population, by subpopulation, that we also can sort of consider that as a tool. Who is connected to a community support provider? Who is connected to an ECM provider? So that we can use that as a strategy to make sure that, right, people get the housing and care that they need in light of any cause.
So let's wrap up around these
Yeah,
services
yeah,
now
yeah.
before we get to that point.
Mhm. Yeah, so great suggestion. I'll definitely note that.
Board members, yes, Greg?
Yeah, just a little clarification. It says Tanya mentioned too, is we've been working over the last year and a half, Tanya.
Yeah.
With both IHP, Community Fire Health Plan, sorry, and Molina, on how do we, especially our smaller providers who don't have the technical capacity, to bill through Medi-Cal, which is a beast in itself. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that there have been some organizations, providers that have approached the health plans, and they're starting to limit, how much they do. There's a fear there of what the Medi-Cal changes are gonna be. The additional fear is if the waiver is pulled back from the federal government in a year and a half. So they've kind of put
Yeah.
the brakes, so to speak. But to Tanya's point, and it's a great suggestion, is that, when we are looking at these subpopulations and placing them with another provider.
Yeah.
Is really looking at that, if we can locate a provider that already is utilizing the enhanced care management and community support.
Very good. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Board members, questions on that, which was just brought up by a member of the public? No? Is there any other member of the, oh, yes, Director,
I just wanted to add a little piece of information. Our agency has done exactly what you were talking about. We've become a provider under Molina. And what we found is that you have to qualify under certain population of focus in order to even utilize that system. And that's not always an easy thing to do. For example, I just know that we've looked at the justice impacted population of focus. And there is like a 2-page list that you have to be able to say yes to in order to even qualify. And substance, say don't do it or
No, I'll give you my business card.
Okay, and then same thing with the substance abuse population of focus. That's something I think that we could look into and would tie into what we're talking about.
very good. Thank you. Other board members? Okay, I'm gonna ask, do we have any members of the public remotely that would have any?
Yes, we have a few questions in the chat, but there is someone that has their hand raised, so we want to open it up to them. The first person that we have is Marsha Zimmerman.
Hi, thank you so much. First of all, I just really appreciate everything that you all are doing.
Marsha, before you start, can you identify you are with an organization, please?
Absolutely, I apologize. I'm with Wellness Equity Alliance. We provide street medicine and ECM services in Riverside County, particularly in the Coachella Valley. And I'm involved with a lot of COCs. This is the most strategic plan that I have heard to date for how COCs are handling this absolute nightmare. So first of all, I just wanted to say it's so clear that we are doing a great job, but I didn't have anything to do with it. So then my question is, I agree with everything everybody's been saying about ECM. Very difficult to get your foot in that door. We spent 2 years making that happen, but we are now able to do ECM out in the desert and on the streets. And so my question, I actually put in the chat also, is street outreach as an SSO something that you guys would consider adding to the application as one of your new projects? And if so, could an organization like ours who's bringing ECM in be considered for something like that so that we could help make this the most competitive application possible?
So the answer is yes. HUD does allow for street outreach. They label it as supportive services only projects as an eligible intervention under this year's NOFO. Anyone interested, and it sounds like Marcia, your agency is, would be encouraged to respond to the request for information or RFI that we anticipate releasing within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Oh, Rashawn already said next week. We'll get out here shortly. And in your response, you can provide information certainly about your current experience doing that, as well as your strategy. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Will you be sending that out to everyone that's on this meeting notice?
The RFI will be sent out to our entire listserv, but so you don't miss it, the best way is to register with our county purchasing department. So we'll go ahead and send out instructions for how to do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Any others?
Yes, we also have Candice Graff with her hand raised.
Candice, if you could introduce yourself and if you are associated with an organization, please.
Yes, hi, my name is Candice Graff. I'm the management analyst for Coachella Valley Association of Governments. We do street outreach and have emergency shelters. I'm just curious, for the new requirements for permanent supportive housing, is that also going to affect project-based vouchers?
No. Project-based vouchers are an eligible component under permanent housing.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking about,
Yes,
okay,
Mike?
you know what, let me
Mike,
clarify.
Mike, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Maybe time, you want to
Okay.
clarify time?
Yeah, sorry, there's two different programs. And just to clarify, so our County Housing Authority Department administers the Housing Choice Voucher Program, a completely separate HUD funded program, and they're able to project base is it up to 20% of their total annual allocation. That is a separate program, not impacted by this NOFO. My response was in regards to under the HUD Continuum of Care program, you are allowed to utilize a specific site or project-based rights. You're allowed to create projects and provide assistance to a specific site. So that was my response.
Very good. Anything more to add to that, Mike?
That was excellent.
Okay, very good. Did you have a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so projects that have permanent supportive housing units where people are referred through the coordinated entry system, those will not be affected, as well as the housing authority units at these projects will also not be affected. Is that correct?
It depends.
Yeah, so this is Mike Walsh, Assistant Director of Housing and Workforce Solutions. I would say in the majority of cases where there's project-based vouchers that are assisted within the county of Riverside, use the example of no place like home units that are home key units that have been provided in the county. These changes will not affect those. Those families individuals would still be receiving services, whether that's through folks like behavioral health or with nonprofit service providers that would not be affected. So in the recent rehabilitation of the apartment complex, the hotel in the Depot City, those units would still be able to receive the services there and still would be eligible for as to qualify as permanent support housing.
Thank you so much.
Is there any other member of the public that has questions?
Yes, we have All Persons House that put a question in the chat and some comments, so I want to see if they want to speak on it before
Do
reading.
you want to speak on it? Otherwise, the question will be read by Julie. Julie, can you please read the question?
Yes, it said, what happened to shared of costs? Transitional works because of shared of costs model.
you know what, maybe we can, I'm not understanding the question, maybe we can follow up with them. We don't have, right, a bid application that's open. So right now we're able to have open conversations with anybody that's interested in applying for funds. So we can send out an email.
I do have a question. So I'm sorry, this is Michael with All Persons House. How's it going today, everybody? So the question is that couldn't we stretch these dollars even further if there was a share of costs? A lot of these people that we're talking about here, the 65 and up, they do get income. Wouldn't it be appropriate to say, hey, there's a share of costs that could go along with providing these services to these individuals and stretch this funding way further than what we currently can do with it?
Yes, great question. I completely understand it now. Under permanent housing, individuals do have or contribute a portion of rent, typically 30% of their income, so that the unit remains affordable. So I wanted to share that first and foremost. And with rapid rehousing, most of our providers do a graduated subsidy that declines over time, so that by month 12, when they're, it's their final month, they're already paying 90% or more of their rent. So yes, I'm glad that you asked the question, because I think it's really important to emphasize that our clients do pay or contribute a portion of their income towards rent. And in many cases, because they aren't on time limited subsidy, are paying more, significantly more than that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Julie, any other questions?
There are no other questions or hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Board members, I would like to ask, do you have any other questions? Director Martin.
I just want to thank the HWS because these times are so uncertain and you guys seem like the beacon of light. And I know I'm here in a formerly homeless capacity, but for my agency, you guys have really guided us through a lot of things. And I know that it's uncertain with this whole NOFO, but I feel like we're in the right county to follow you and to really just hone in on this. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I think we all echo those same comments. Any other board member have any questions or comments? And I just want to say that I'm usually the optimistic person in my family, but I've been expecting this. So we've all been expecting something like this, and it is coming down pretty hard. And I feel really, really bad for all the families that are going to be impacted negatively, all the organizations that have been doing such great work, and to have to deal with this and to try to figure out how to sustain their program is going to be really rough. So thank you for the support that you're giving them and through this very difficult process. I appreciate what Director Marler said. And so with that said, we have a recommended motion before us, which is to revise the HUD COC competition process to release a request for qualification. Request for information will make that change to identify prospective vendors for new projects developed under the fiscal year 2025 HUD COC NOFO and which align with HUD's priorities. A request for information will be issued in early February with official contract awards to follow HUD's announcement of COC funding decisions expected in May or June of 2026. Is there someone that would like to make the motion? Director Marler, we have a first, and we have Director Fry making the second. Is there any questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Is there any noes? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. It passes with the recommended motion.
Okay.
It's revised from yours.
Okay, we have to say it again. Yeah. But I did say RFI. Did I make, is there another change that needs to be made besides to make sure we get it right? No. Is that it? Just the RFI?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for making sure we got it right. Okay, so we will.
Repeat the motion and then.
Director Marler made the motion, Director Fry seconded. Okay, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda is 5.0 announcements. Is there any member of our board that would like to make an announcement at this time? Any member of the public that would like to make a announcement at this time? No announcements?
I'll
Okay.
make a quick announcement. So, if you guys have anyone on Thanksgiving Day from 11 o'clock to about 2 o'clock at the Life Church, we'll be providing a hot meal, to anybody who comes there. I think right now we have about 115 people who have registered to be there, but I think there's still room for others. So on Thanksgiving Day, we know a lot of times people feel displaced on that day of having to just be out until 6 p.m. So at the Life Church, it's 10769 Pole Avenue in Riverside. There will be a hot meal being provided with entertainment and drinks and dessert and all of that kind of thing.
Thank you to the Life Church. Yes, please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Leslie Evans. I'm the manager of programs for the AIDS Project. Just wanted to announce that we are a full service provider for individuals who are diagnosed with HIV and AIDS, and we do currently have a prioritization wait list for individuals for crisis housing. We do have rental assistance, utility assistance, and security deposit assistance. So if you have anybody who's diagnosed, send them away. We are located in Riverside, and we do also service the San Bernardino County area as well. But we are located, our office is located in the city of Riverside, and we service pretty much everything.
Could you repeat your name and the organization's name?
Leslie Evans and Foothill AIDS Project. We service all of Riverside County, up to the Palm Desert area where Desert AIDS Project services that area.
Thank you very much. Yes. Can you
Hi.
please identify yourself?
Yes, I'm Marcelito from Renewing Hope Diaries. We actually have a breakfast with Santa coming up on December 20th. We are hoping to provide toys and food, along with additional meals for at least 100 people. So we're estimating about 300 to 500. This is going to be on December 20th. So feel free to refer, and I also have some cards if you want to get in contact with me regarding this.
Thank you very much for the announcement. Is there any other that you're now remembering? Yes.
I have an announcement. My name is Kristen. I'm with Healthcare in Action. I have a side organization called SoCal Trash Army. If anyone is looking to serve on Thanksgiving from 12:30 to 2, we have 600 meals that are going out to San Bernardino and Riverside County streets. So you can find me on Instagram, or you can send a message to Kristen Malaby at healthcareinaction.org to learn more about that. Also, we are collecting toys for Christmas as well. Several thousand families in San Bernardino County and in Riverside for Feliz Navidad. It will be held in downtown San Bernardino. For more information, you can also email me at kmalaby@healthcareinaction.org.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Want to miss anything? Okay, we will move on to the next item, which is 6.0, Director's Report. Tanya, do you have anything to report?
No.
You're pretty much. Next item, which is 7.0, call for agenda items for the next meeting. Is there any member of our board that would like to request an item to be placed on the next meeting in December?
So I mentioned earlier.
Yes, Director Johnson, you may.
Thank you so much. I mentioned just that we work on language and so I do hope that that makes the agenda that we thoughtfully craft the language that not only goes to vendors, but also to recipients, the larger community, so that we're carefully orchestrating, the narrative.
Is there any other? Yes.
I would love for us to discuss how we move forward with the potential addition of law enforcement members to our body.
Okay. Any other board member? Okay. Then we will move on to the next item, which is next 8.0, which is the next meeting. We are scheduled to meet Thursday, December 11th, 9 to 11 at the city of Banning City Chambers. So there we have it, December 11th. And at this time, 2:43, I will call for the adjournment of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.